Everybody, welcome to the video. It's Tuesday, July 20th, and we're breaking down this massive 13-game slate that we have over on DraftKings today. And let me just tell you, yesterday might have been the craziest slate I've ever experienced playing MLB DFS. And I mean, there was just so many runs scored. All the good pitchers besides Shohei Ohtani got smacked around for the most part. I think maybe some of the three worst projected pitchers on the slate ended up being like three of the four highest scoring. Like we had Woodford, John Lester, and the Orioles pitcher Watkins. It was crazy, man. Crazy slate. There were so many high-scoring offenses. Nationals, Red Sox, the Mets and Reds game ended up popping off around 25 total runs. It was a crazy one. Hopefully you survived. I ended up playing Kyle Gibson in cash games because I had to pivot off of Yu Darvish, and I would have been better off just leaving Yu Darvish in my lineup. But I mean, fortunately enough, my bats were good enough for Kyle Gibson. It didn't kill me. It was close. I was like in last place heading into the 10 p.m. games. Somehow, some way, I was able to creep in there over the cash line. So hopefully you guys survived yesterday's slate because it was a wild one, but I am looking forward to today's because it should be pretty good once again. And as always, if you guys find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And follow me over on social media in order to find me using the handles in the bottom hand corner of your screen. And if it helps for the channel over on Patreon, get access into my entire spreadsheet and all the other tools that I have to offer, including my own personal optimizer, which you can build stacks, 150 lineups, and all that fun stuff. Rankings, projections, ownership projections, and Discord community, all down in the link down below. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. You don't have to worry about salary cap restrictions or anything like that. And there's some pretty soft lines that you can find throughout the day. So right now, you can get a free money bonus up to $100, instant deposit match up to $100 using code CPEN if you go to prizepicks.com, or you can find it down in the link down below. But again, that is code CPEN, and make sure you tell them I sent you. But I think that's it for the plug, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as per usual, we'll start with the pitchers and move on to the bats. And once again, I don't think there's any slam dunks at pitcher today, but I will say there is some pretty solid options, and there's a few guys that do find themselves in some pretty good matchups, but I wouldn't say any one of these guys are super duper elite plays, but relative to the slate, I think these are probably pretty much some of the best options that we had to choose from. I'll start up top with Yu Darvish, $9,800, assuming weather cooperates today. Again, we'll have to revisit weather around like 5-6 p.m. because I'm not in the business of trying to predict how rain's going to happen, especially in a place like Atlanta where storms can fire up throughout the day. So just we'll wait until the end of the day, right before the slate starts. We'll see what weather is telling us. But as of right now, I think Yu Darvish is pretty much our best pitching option here. Going up against Atlanta, Atlanta's a good team. They have plenty of power, but they will strike out quite a bit versus righties. And I know Ronald Acuna out of the lineup overall helps Yu Darvish. Acuna will strike out quite a bit, so you're kind of losing the strikeout upside a little bit there. But I mean, Acuna is very dangerous. He could easily take Yu Darvish deep and, help him get shut a little bit. So with him out of the lineup, it definitely helps things. And Yu Darvish being below 10K for a guy that's got around a 30% K rate, facing a team with over a 25.5% K rate to righties, I think he's in a pretty good spot at this price point. Unfortunately for us, he was only $9,200 yesterday, I believe, and now he's up to $9,800, so we don't get that massive discount that we had yesterday, but I still think he's a pretty good play here. I think he could probably get us around 20 points, which raw points wise, he does great out. It's pretty much the best play on the slate here. I don't think he's an absolute must play, but if you're looking for your SP1 in cash games, I would not mind getting up to Yu Darvish here. His numbers on the season are pretty good. 3.7x. It's a little bit high considering his ERA is around 3, but this year is low 3s, around a 30% K. Doesn't really walk too many guys, doesn't give up much power. Kind of has to lean to fly balls, which I don't love, especially in Atlanta. It's definitely a park downgrade going from Petco to Atlanta, but I think Yu Darvish can be fine here in the strikeout department. He might give up a run or two or a homer or two, but hopefully those are limited to solo shots, and I think he could probably get a 6+ strikeouts here. And his K props at 6.5, so I don't think it'd be a surprise here if we could hit the over there. Plus, he's a pretty heavy favorite. I think the Padres are a decent stack tonight versus Muller. I wouldn't say they're my favorite offense because Muller has been pretty decent so far this season, considering he's got around 30% K rate, but it is a small sample size. I do think the righties could give him a little bit of fits there. 4 implied team total against him, but I think Darvish is a fine projection play. Same goes for Aaron Nola, $9,500. Not loving the matchup here. Don't like going to Yankee Stadium. Definitely a hitter-friendly park here. But the bottom of the order for the Yankees is pretty gross at this point. Like some of those guys you probably haven't heard of. I saw Greg Allen was projected about 9th today. I remember his days on the Indians. He had a stretch where he was okay, but he's still not that very good of a player. And there's a couple guys that you're like, well, I think this is probably some easy outs for Aaron Nola, and some of the best bats do strike out quite a bit. So I think there's a good strikeout upside matchup here for Aaron Nola. Now, obviously, matchup versus the Yankees, they do have some power, so it could always go south, but his numbers on the season have been pretty good. 3.3 exit, which is way better than his 4.5 ERA, 29% K rate, which 29.5, so we can round up to 30 if you want to be nice to him. Over 11 Ks per 9, low walk rate, kind of similar numbers to you Darvish here. So I like the strikeout upside for Nola. Don't like the stadium that he's pitching in, especially on the road, but at $9,500, I do think he's a good projection play, similar to you Darvish. If I had to pick one, though, I'm probably siding with you Darvish over Aaron Nola, but it is pretty close there. I feel like more people would lean towards playing you Darvish in cash games over Aaron Nola. As of right now, that's my 8 a.m. thoughts on those two pitchers. And then dropping down to Shane McClanahan, $8,600. So yesterday was weird for me because I was not on Ryan Yarborough whatsoever, and that's not me bragging that I faded a really chalky pitcher because I played Cal Gibson in cash games, so who am I to talk? But Ryan Yarborough was like, he's in the mid-8K range yesterday. The Orioles are pretty good versus lefties this season. Like I was not understanding the massive chalk on Yarborough. He was doing good for a while. He ended up giving up 6 runs though at the end, kind of got killed in his last inning. Ended up with, 4 points, which, again, that's 12 points better than Cal Gibson. But, I mean, the Orioles are good versus lefties, which you're probably wondering why I had McClanahan here, but he just has a lot more strikeout upside than Ryan Yarborough does. So, but, Yarborough's a stop-tossing lefty, and they don't strike out versus lefties really whatsoever. Only 21% K rate, 112 WRC+, 334 WOBA, and a 168 S. So, like, this is a good team versus lefties. The thing is, though, with McClanahan, I like his upside a lot more. Like, he actually can strike out some guys. Like, so far, it's a smaller sample size for him, but sporting over a 28% K rate, a really nice 3.2 xFIP, 155 ISO given up. But I'm mainly just interested in the strikeout upside here, plus the park's good for pitching. And the Baltimore Orioles have a really low implied team total today at 3.32. It might feel a little bit low because, again, Baltimore is a good team versus lefties, but I wouldn't hate using McClanahan as a SP2 today in any format. Very heavy favorite here. John Means is going to be making a start for Baltimore, but he's probably pretty limited. I think his last 2 bullpen sessions, he only went around 3 innings, so don't really think we could expect him to go past 4 or 5 here. And then the Baltimore Orioles bullpen's not exactly great. I mean, Spencer Watkins mowed down the Tampa Bay Rays yesterday, which is weird. I mean, his ERA is like around 1 or 2, but his xFIP's are about 5 runs higher than that. So regression is going to hit that guy like a truck. Probably when we're in Baltimore though, rather than Tampa Bay, because this is pretty much the best pitcher's park in baseball. So I think McClanahan is an interesting option here. I do worry about him being a lefty versus the Orioles, but at least he does have some strikeout upside. German Marquez, $8,100. He's been on fire for like a month now. I know the team total is really high here versus Seattle, but you have to imagine a lot of that damage would probably come from the Rockies bullpen. It's one of the worst overall bullpens in baseball. The team xFIP is pretty high. So I think when Marquez is in the game, Seattle can do pretty well. And I would not recommend doing this in cash games, but if you want to get crazy, you could use Marquez and still use Seattle bats in your lineup and just kind of hope Marquez mows them down and then the bullpen gets through them. That's not something I'd ever recommend, but I could see a situation where that's possible. Like last night, Ohtani, he did well, but then as soon as he went out of the game, obviously the Oakland A's started scoring runs in that pretty bad Angels bullpen. Again, that's just kind of crazy thinking there. I wouldn't personally do that, but I guess that could be an option for you guys if you want to get nuts. Anyway, Marquez, so far this season, he's been good. 3.3 ERA, xFIP and SIERA is a little bit higher than that, but still a 25% K rate. Not a lot of power given up, a nicely in the ground balls, which is always nice. About half a homer per 9, only a 31% hard contact rate. And the Mariners this season versus righties striking out over 26% of the time. And I know a recent game versus the Mariners, I think Marquez took a no-no like into the 7th or 8th inning. So not saying it's going to happen again, but love the matchup here versus Seattle. And I like this price point on Marquez. I know it's Coors Field, which is probably going to be a pretty high-scoring game here, but I think when Marquez is in the game, I think he can kind of limit the damage and get some strikeouts. Then dropping down to Skubal here, $7,700. I think both pitchers in this game are somewhat interesting here. Skubal's definitely got plenty of strikeout upside. Now the problem with him is that he'll give up plenty of power, especially to righties. But I mean, I'm not really scared of this Texas lineup. Versus lefties this season, they really haven't had much power whatsoever. Only a 145 team ISO. They're not striking out a ton, but some pretty pedestrian numbers overall. And I think Skubal with his strikeout upside, I mean, I think he'll be fine here. I mean, he's got a 27% K rate. He walks guys. He gives up plenty of power. So kind of like the bugaboos with him. But Texas is not a scary lineup. 4.1 implied team total here. He's a slight favorite. And at $7,700, I think he's worth a play in tournaments. Then on the opposite side of this game, we have Dane Dunning, $6,700. We might have to stop picking on Detroit because, just looking at their game logs, that's not something I really like to do too much. But, when a team's hot, they're hot. And besides one game where I think they scored 0 runs, they've actually been scoring a lot of runs recently. I know overall their team has been bad this year. Like if you just look at the overall numbers, it would suggest that, pretty much use any pitcher every single day versus Detroit. But recently, they have been hitting kind of well. I'm not sure if I'm just being recency biased with Cal Gibson because he we all played him yesterday. He's around 40% in cash games. I think a lot of that had to do with Darvish being rained out because I think we all pivoted off of Darvish to Cal Gibson. I don't think he would have had nearly that ownership, so we all kind of got put in a rough spot there to have to kind of pivot right to Cal Gibson because he's right around that price point. But Dane Dunning's not a bad pitcher. He's got more of a strikeout upside than Kyle Gibson here. He's sitting at around 25% clip this season. Problem is, Texas doesn't really want him going super deep into games, but if he's efficient while he's out there, it could work out because he's below $7,000, kind of like Casey Mize yesterday, because Detroit's not letting him go deep into games either. Now, he was good when he was out there. I think he ended up with around 13 points, and at his price point, that wasn't terrible, especially considering the other pitchers on yesterday's slate. Not saying that's going to be the same case today. I can't imagine everyone's going to get blown up once again, but Dunning, below 7K. I wish he was cheaper. He's only averaging around 75 pitches per game, but he limits the power. He gets a lot of ground balls. Detroit overall this season has struggled versus righties, but he's definitely a tournament option only for me because, his workload is going to be limited. But I think that's it for the pitchers for the most part, so I think we can move right over to the bats. And once again, this is a pretty good bat slate. I have a couple of cheap catchers here, or I guess a few. We have Tucker Barnard, Danny Jansen, Victor Caratini. I was also looking at Christian Vasquez and Cal Raleigh. That's how you pronounce his name on Seattle, just because he's in Coors Field. But there's no limited options on the cheap catchers today. There's plenty to pick from, but these are the three I landed on for you guys. Tucker Barnard, $2,800. I like going right back to the Cincy and Mets game. I guess I should say Reds and Mets game, but I mean, this is looking like it could pop off once again. I'm more interested in the Reds than I am the Mets. I think they have a tougher matchup versus Wade Miley. Wade Miley's not exactly the greatest pitcher out there, but he gets a lot of ground balls, and he's kind of an annoying pitcher to sack against. So if you want to use guys like Pete Alonso, I think that's fine. But for the most part, I'm kind of focusing on the Reds in this slate. They're going against Robert Stock, and should see a lot of the bullpen as well. And both teams had to go into their bullpens quite a bit yesterday, so that's going to help things as well. And as of right now, the Reds, they have a 5.8 implied team total, which you'd think it might be the highest on the slate because that's pretty high. But as of right now, the Blue Jays are a little bit higher, and as are the Rockies in Coors Field. But the Reds are definitely looking pretty good, and they're very cheap today. Like, they are a super cheap stack. Not sure what DraftKings is doing with their price tags, but you're going to see quite a few cheap Reds today. But Tucker Barnard, he's a decent hitting catcher. He's got some pop versus righties. It's Great American Small Park. Pretty much the best place to hit besides Coors Field, especially this time of the year when it's hot and muggy in Cincinnati. So I do like Tucker Barnard quite a bit. Danny Jansen, $2,800. If you guys know the strategy by now, if you guys been watching my videos, when there's no like really good expensive catchers, just play the cheap catcher on the team you're stacking, or just get a cheap portion, or just get like a cheap piece of a really good offense. That's typically what I do with catchers. Like, none of these guys are very good hitters, so if you think their team's just going to score 6+ runs, should be more ABs for the guys hitting down low, which would include a guy like Danny Jansen, considering the Blue Jays have a team total of 6 yesterday. The Red Sox hammered the Blue Jays last night. I think we could see the opposite here going against Garrett Richards, who has been very, 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 very bad without that sticky stuff, so I do like stacking the Blue Jays here quite a bit tonight. And then Victor Caratini, he's free. I think Jonah Heim is free too. I want to say $2,000. Tariq Skubal does give up plenty of power versus righty, so I think he's interesting. But I do have Caratini here. Team total close to 5. Not a very good hitting catcher, but if you want a cheap piece of the San Diego Padres offense, I think he's a viable option. Dropping out of Vlad, he's very expensive, $6,000, but he's got to be one of the top overall plays on the slate. I believe he's my highest projected player. Not that that's a surprise or anything. He's pretty much, him and Tatis are pretty much our highest projected players almost every single night, but I think it's deserved. Ohtani as well whenever he's a hitter, when he's facing a righty. But I mean, Vlad and Tatis, I mean, guys are absolutely money almost every single night. He didn't go off yesterday, as the Blue Jays kind of were pretty pedestrian compared to most teams last night, but I mean, Vlad's got all the power in the world, high WOBA, high batting average. I mean, there's nothing bad to say about Vladimir Guerrero here. Gets a great matchup versus Garrett Richards. Loving all the Blue Jays tonight quite a bit. CJ Cron, $5,000. He's always had power versus lefties. He's got over a 200 ISO this season. Marco Gonzalez, very average pitcher at best. The Rockies own the highest implied team total in the slate at 6.2. We're in Coors Field. It's warm this time of the year. The ball should definitely fly quite a bit. Definitely liking all the Rockies here, especially the righties, but you can use the lefties in tournaments if you want. Then Joey Votto, just a nice mid-range Reds player here. He hits cleanup, which is a prime spot in the order. Should have plenty of RBI opportunities here. And I just like the price point. I love all the Reds quite a bit, especially the lefties here versus Stock and whoever else the bullpen throws at them. Then dropping out of second base, we have Brendan Rodgers and Garrett Hampson. Pretty much the same play here. I guess I'd prefer Hampson because he's $300 cheaper and he's leading off, or at least projected to, but both guys are excellent plays, and you could always play Hampson in the outfield as well if you do want to play both, but both are in Coors Field, righty and lefty matchups here. Highest team total on the slate. Both have around the same ISO and close to the same batting average. I think they're pretty much the same play in my opinion. So if you want to play both, you can do that. But if you want to pick one, I'd probably prefer Garrett Hampson. Jonathan India, $4,000. Pretty cheaper. Like, the Reds should be probably all closer to $5,000, but not really sure what DraftKings is thinking here. I know it's a righty on righty matchup instead of the lefty on righty, but I still think India is a fine play. He's been good this year, not a ton of power, but batting .275 with a close to a 400 OBP, and I just like getting all of the Reds that I can handle today. Then going to third base, we have Rafael Devers, $5,400. So I think this game could easily pop off once again. We have Thomas Hatch, who has not made a big league start this year. He's been okay in the minors, but definitely different going from the minors to having to play. The Boston Red Sox have been one of the better hitting teams in baseball this season, so I'm definitely going to give the edge to the Boston Red Sox here. Their team total is not quite as high as the Blue Jays, but still at right around 5.5. And Devers crushes right-handed pitching, so I think he's a great play. He went deep yesterday as well. So I feel like every single Boston Red Sox bat went deep yesterday. Not playing Devers, I would say if you're stacking the Blue Jays, you play Biggio. If you're stacking the Reds, you play Eugenio Suarez. They're both around the same price tag, both hit a little bit lower in the order. But if I had to pick one, I feel like Suarez has more home run upside than Biggio. Hitting for really low batting averages this year, but I mean Suarez has at least more power upside. It's a very hitter-friendly park in Cincinnati, although it is in Buffalo as well for the Blue Jays. But both are fine options, just depends on who you're stacking. Dropping out a shortstop, this looks like a really good position to spend up on. Plus, I've given you guys plenty of value plays here, so I don't think it'd be too hard to spend up for a shortstop today. But Trevor Story, $1,500 right on with the matchup in Coors Field. I think that kind of explains itself. Tatis, $5,700. If you ever had the money for Tatis, he's always going to be one of the top plays in the entire slate. Don't really care who he's facing, but he's facing Kyle Muller, young new pitcher. So, I mean, he's been good so far, but he's still new. And, I mean, I'm going to obviously give the edge to Tatis here. He's got some of the best numbers in baseball this season with over a 370 ISO and a 420 WOBA with around a 300 batting average. I mean, he's never a bad play. Like, if you can put Tatis in your lineup, I never feel bad about that whatsoever. So I think he's a fine cash game target. Although for $200 more, I can get Trevor Story in Coors Field. So that is very, very tempting, especially with the run total being over a run higher than the Padres here. And then Bo Bichette, $5,000. Like all the Blue Jays, like I mentioned, this game could easily pop off once again. His numbers compared to Tatis always look a little bit more pedestrian, but he's still been one of the better hitting shortstops in all of baseball this season. And you could also look at Xander Bogaerts as well if you prefer the Red Sox over the Blue Jays. Then dropping down to the outfield here, not liking any of the spend-up options here, so I'm kind of sticking with the mid-range and the cheap options. But I do have George Springer, $4,600. Plenty of power upside here versus Garrett Richards. I can play righties or lefties versus him. Doesn't really matter, but I do like this Blue Jays stack quite a bit tonight. JD Martinez, $4,600. It just depends on who you're stacking. Again, if you're stacking Blue Jays, you play the Blue Jays outfitters. If you're stacking the Red Sox, use the Red Sox outfitters. That would include JD Martinez, Kike Hernandez, and Alex Verdugo. And you could also play Duran here, who seems to have taken Alex Verdugo's spot in the order. Yesterday he batted second, and then Verdugo went down to 6th. So, I mean, you can play Verdugo as well, but if Duran's going to hit in the 2-hole at only $2,300, I'd rather just play that. And he went deep yesterday as well. The Teoscar Hernandez, like the same play as George Springer, so I'm not going to just keep saying the same thing, but both guys have shown plenty of power this season. Nick Castellanos, $4,100. He got the day off yesterday, which is unfortunate because I feel like the Reds could have used him a little bit. I mean, they scored a lot of runs, but I mean, Castellanos might have been able to help them a little bit there. But I mean, $4,100. All these Reds are really cheap. They're in a great hitter's park. It's hot and muggy this time of the season. Robert Stock doesn't really scare me. The Mets bullpen doesn't really scare me. And on the season, Nick Castellanos has been one of the best hitters in baseball. I mean, he's batting .331 over a 400 WOBA, 254 ISO, 156 WRC plus. Like, he has been absolutely fantastic. I know it's a righty-on-righty matchup, but I mean, if you're stacking the Reds, it's kind of hard to leave off Nick Castellanos, especially at that price point. Then Tommy Pham, $300. I mean, I don't love the Padres today, but guys like Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Tommy Pham, Will Myers, all those guys I think are playable today, but I wouldn't say they're my favorite stack. But if you want to get a little bit contrarian, I think they make sense. Jesse Winker, $3,900. He's your top play in the slate once again. I want to say he was 70% owned in cash games yesterday. Now that the Reds went off, he scored over 20 points, and he's even cheaper today. I'd expect him to be even more popular, probably approaching 75-80% in cash games today. But $3,900, just a joke of a price tag for a guy that's been one of the best hitters in baseball versus right-handed pitching this season. So if you missed yesterday's video, I can show you the stats, but they're insane. Batting around 350, 460 WOBA, 321 ISO, 190 WRC plus, only a 14% K rate, and over 1,000 OPS. Like, I mean, he's been murdering right-handed pitching this season. He's been one of the best places to hit in all of baseball. Jesse Winker, if you're not playing him in cash games today, I think you're doing something wrong. Kike Hernandez, $3,700. I believe he went double dong yesterday, but I like all the Red Sox and the Blue Jays in this game quite a bit. Both pitchers do not scare me, and both have a team total above 5 today. Tyler Naquin, $2,300. I want to say he was like 55% in cash games. He scored, 25 points, and he's not quite as good as Winker. I always call him the great value version of Jesse Winker, but at $2,300, he's pretty much free. Left and righty matchup, I mean, he should be very chalky once again. I think in cash games today, you need to start your lineups with Tyler Naquin and Jesse Winker. And if you're doing that and you play a guy like Duran as well, you can play pretty much anybody else you want. So you can afford a guy like Tatis or Story. You can afford a guy like Vlad. So I don't really think it's going to be too hard to fit those guys in today because there's some dirt cheap outfielders in elite spots tonight. And Duran, $2,300. If he's batting second once again, I mean, it's going to be kind of hard to fade him as well. Team total around 5.5. I can see that rising throughout the day. Thomas Hatch, I mean, he's brand new to the big leagues, and I guess Durant is as well, so it's kind of an even matchup there, but you still get lefty and righty matchup here, and I'm liking this game quite a bit. Could definitely pop off in Buffalo once again. But that being said, guys, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to follow me over on social media, or find me using the handles in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, get access into my entire spreadsheet, not just this tiny player pool that I show you on YouTube, and my own optimizer, the projections, ownership projections, rankings, the cheat sheet that I update throughout the day, and all that fun stuff. Link is down below in the description. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks. Check them out if you haven't already. It's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. And as of right now, you can get a free money bonus up to $100. That's an instant deposit match up to $100 using code CPEN at either prizepicks.com, or you can find them down in the link in the description. But that'd be pretty much it. I will stop rambling, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.